In a move that signals escalating tensions in South Asia, Pakistan on Thursday announced the suspension of the historic Simla Agreement, a foundational treaty signed with India in 1972 to promote peace and bilateral dialogue following the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. The decision comes just days after India suspended the Indus Waters Treaty in response to the devastating terrorist attack in Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir on Tuesday, which claimed 26 lives, mostly civilians. Pakistan cited India's manifested behavior of fomenting terrorism inside Pakistan, transnational killings, and non adherence to international law and UN resolutions on Kashmir as key reasons for abandoning the pact. Signed on the 2nd of July 1972 in Simla, India, the Simla Agreement was a pivotal moment in the history of India-Pakistan relations. It followed the bloody 1971 war that resulted in the creation of Bangladesh and the capture of more than 90,000 Pakistani prisoners of war by Indian forces. The accord was formalized between the then Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and Pakistani President Zulfikar Ali Bhutto with the hope of charting a new path towards peaceful coexistence. The agreement aimed to resolve disputes bilaterally, avoid future conflict, and bring a degree of normalcy to a region scarred by decades of hostility. One of India's top priorities was to ensure that the Kashmir dispute would be addressed through direct dialogue between the two countries. By embedding bilateralism into the agreement, India sought to prevent Pakistan from raising the issue in international forums like the United Nations. With a decisive victory in the 1971 war and a new regional power balance in its favor, India was keen to move towards a more stable and peaceful relationship with Pakistan. Despite its strategic upper hand, India refrained from demanding that the ceasefire line be converted into a permanent international boundary. This was a deliberate effort to avoid deepening Pakistan's resentment or triggering a revanchist response, which could destabilize future relations. The agreement underscored that all disputes between India and Pakistan would be settled peacefully, without the use of force and primarily through bilateral negotiations. This marked a significant shift from previous hostilities. One of the most sensitive aspects addressed was the redefinition of the 1971 ceasefire line as a line of control. Both nations agreed to respect this line and not attempt to alter it unilaterally while maintaining their respective stances on the Kashmir issue. To de-escalate the situation, both countries agreed to withdraw their troops to their respective sides of the international border. This move was seen as a step towards restoring normalcy and reducing the risk of renewed conflict. The Simla Agreement also laid the groundwork for continued diplomatic engagement. It included provisions for regular meetings between the leaders of both the countries and discussions on issues such as the repatriation of prisoners of war and other humanitarian concerns. However, Pakistan's move on Thursday to formally suspend the Simla Agreement has been accompanied by a series of retaliatory actions. Pakistani authorities have blocked their airspace to Indian airlines, shut down the Wagah border crossing, and halted all trade with India. These steps represent one of the most severe diplomatic breakdowns between the two countries in the recent years. Over the last 5 decades, the Simla Agreement stood as a cornerstone of India-Pakistan diplomacy. It encouraged periods of dialogue and eased tensions during times of conflict. By institutionalizing the principle of bilateralism, it helped limit the scope of international interference in the contentious Kashmir dispute and provided a platform for future peace efforts. The suspension of the Simla Agreement is a stark reminder of the volatility that continues to define India-Pak relations. While the treaty was forged in the hope of preventing another war, current developments reveal how fragile peace remains in the region. With diplomatic channels shrinking and mistrust deepening, the path forward appears uncertain. Whether this suspension marks a temporary rift or a more permanent rupture will depend on the ability and the willingness of both nations to return to the negotiating table.